Been a lot of talk about praying here this weekend, so why don't we do a little bit more of it? Heavenly Father, use me tonight as an instrument that I will speak through me, so whatever results that you desire here tonight will be accomplished in all things. Thy will, not mine, be done. Amen. What I love most about Alcoholics Anonymous is the simplicity of it. There's a passage in our book, and I ain't going to sit up here and tell you what page and what chapter it is. Read it yourself. But there's a passage in our book that bottom lines the simplicity of Alcoholics Anonymous for me. And what that passage says is simply this: at certain times, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink, and except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human can provide such a defense. That defense must come from a higher power. It don't say it might come, ought to come, should come, maybe come. It says it must come from a higher power. The single most important fact in my life as I stand here tonight is that I got a power in my life that I choose to call God, who does for me one day at a time what I could never do for myself. If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? I'm a guy who drinks no matter what. When my job, when my family, when my freedom, and eventually when my life depended on me not drinking, I drank. If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? That prayer reminds me of two things that I believe are vital and crucial to me staying here. First and foremost, the reason I'm in Las Vegas tonight is to do God's will, not mine. And it also serves to remind me that He is in charge here tonight, and as always, thank God, I am not. Good evening. My name is Kent Coleman. I'm an alcoholic. First of all, my parents raised me right. I want to demonstrate that. I want to thank this committee. Let's give this committee a hand for this roundup we had here this weekend. I'm always mindful of the fact that when I step off an airplane 2 or 3 times a month to do something like this, and I walk in, people have been working for a whole year. They'll start tomorrow when this ends, getting prepared for next year. And it's truly a labor of love so that we can have things like this to enhance our sobriety and to help us to enjoy some of this fellowship. So I want to say thank you to this committee. I want to thank Mr. West for affording me the honor and the privilege, asking me to speak here. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in the life-giving, life-changing, life-saving fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at any level, whether it's setting up and cleaning up at the home group, going into the jails and institutions. I'm going to get on an airplane tomorrow morning and fly back to Ohio. Monday I will be in a maximum security facility speaking at the meeting for the boys. It's something that I do every year. Anything I'm privileged to do, I can never give back enough. How can you possibly give back enough to a fellowship that restores life to the living dead? When I came to the fellowship of AA, mentally, physically, and spiritually, I was more dead than alive. And I got a message for you. That ain't how I'm living now. That ain't how I'm living now. I am enjoying a level of life better than the best I've ever known. I hear a lot of people say things like, oh, if I had wrote down on a piece of paper what I wanted when I came to AA, I would have really sold myself short. You know why that is? Because the human mind is incapable of grasping and understanding the richness and the fullness of the grace of God. That's the reason why. See, God has things in store for me yet. The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. So no, I couldn't comprehend when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I just wanted to stop hurting and stop hurting other people. And I would have settled for that. I would have settled for that. And I've been given so much more. And I'm going to talk about some of that. I want to say thank you. I want to talk to our new friends here tonight. Teresa talked earlier today about these countdowns and how we brutalize new people in these countdowns. I remember what it was like to be new in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had never been here before. I didn't come here with no information about AA. I didn't know what a sponsor was, what a home group was, what a big book was. I didn't know an open meeting, a closed meeting. I knew nothing. nothing of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And nobody sprinkled pixie dust over my head when I walked in here. And now all of a sudden I know what this stuff is. I remember what it was like to be new. Most of my friends in AA now are sober 20 to 40 years. And every now and then somebody will say something like, oh, you know, I kind of forgot what it was like in here. If you in here now and you got some time and you've forgotten what it's like to be new, I got a suggestion for you. Sponsor somebody. Sponsor somebody. No, when I came in AA, I didn't know none of this stuff. And nobody beat me up when I came up in here. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was largely unapproachable. I didn't know nothing about this. I was very angry. I was very frustrated. I was very, very afraid. And afraid people keep you at a distance. I have a propensity in those days for spontaneous violence. So people, and not because I'm a bad guy or a tough guy, I'm a scared guy. Okay, and so I'm willing to do what I need to do to keep you away from me. Okay, and so nobody came like they did T and gave me no sponsor. They gave me some room is what they gave me. No, and I came in here and I began to listen. See, I'm a guy that hears best with my eyes, you know. And when I came to AA, I saw people who were doing well and people who were not doing well. So I took a look at this, and the people who weren't doing well, in and out, every time they came back in, they looked worse than the last time they came back in from being out. I didn't see nobody coming up in here passing out $50 bills and driving a BMW saying, come join me. It done got better out there. No. They were restless, irritable, and discontented and talked of terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. So that's this group of people I saw. Then there was another group of people I saw. We'll call them group 2. And these are the people, if you've been at this Roundup any amount of time this weekend, you've seen them in action, chairing meetings, out there working at the registration, you know, taking care of the hospitality rooms. You see them at your group shaking hands at the door, making coffee, putting out literature. They talk about God, big book steps, enjoying life and helping others in sobriety. Happy, joyous, and free. We'll call them group 2. My story will prove to you I am no rocket scientist, but it looked to me like the people in group 2 had a heck of a better deal than the people in group 1. So, you know, keeping things simple, what is it that the people in group 2 do, the people in group 1 don't? Well, they had some things in common. They had something called a sponsor. Now, when I came to AA, I didn't know what a sponsor was. I used to play softball for Cronin's Tavern. They was our sponsor. They gave us free beer and clothes. I thought, well, maybe AA ain't so bad. I don't know, you know. And you told me what a sponsor was. You told me a sponsor is somebody who has working knowledge and experience with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, who is willing to take the time to walk me through that process as outlined in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and just as importantly is a living demonstration of those principles in their life. Notice I said working knowledge and experience, not book knowledge and experience. I went to college. I know how to read. You need to show me. I hear best with my eyes. I have sponsorship in Alcoholics Anonymous today. Actually, my sponsor lives in Las Vegas. His name is Bob D. I still have the continued spiritual guidance and support of Bill F. in Lorain, Ohio, and Ken B. in Parma, Ohio, the 2 men who raised me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill has 50 years, Kenny has 40, Bob has 35. That is 125 years of active, continuous sobriety that I have at my disposal on a daily basis if I choose to use it. To our new friends here tonight, having a sponsor is a wonderful thing. Being sponsorable is even better. The only results I've ever gotten in Alcoholics Anonymous have come from actions I've taken, not people and things that I've known. Okay? I like to do this sometime. I think I do it tonight because I know it's a lot of new people here. Would everybody that's in this hall right now who would be willing to sponsor a new person in Alcoholics Anonymous, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. If you knew and you ain't got a sponsor, I just hooked you up. No one ever need leave an AA meeting without the benefit of sponsorship. And everybody laughs when I do that, but I want you to understand something. When I came here, I don't know if you got 10 years or 10 minutes, nor do I know if you'd be willing to help a guy like me who doesn't even believe he deserves any help. So if you knew in here, the help that you need just identified itself. What you do with that information is up to you. Now, I sponsor a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I sponsor like crazy. I sponsor guys on continents. A guy said to me recently, Ken, how many people do you sponsor? I said, oh, about half of them. But ain't that the truth? Oh, really? Ain't that the truth? Right? To get yourself a sponsor, you can get you one here before you leave tonight. Another thing that people in Group 2 had in common was something was called a home group. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was one of them typical newcomers. I heard them talk about home groups, and they said, oh, the people in your group get to know you, and they'll call you up if they don't see you. Well, I didn't want that, okay? So when people ask me what my home group was, maybe you've heard a newcomer say it, maybe you've said it yourself. All the groups are my home group, right? Yeah, right. I ain't got no responsibility here at all, right? So they told me, if you ain't got a home group in AA, you homeless. You homeless in AA, and this is the last place in the world I can afford to be homeless. I have a home group today. It's the Friday Night Venice group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sandusky, Ohio. I can tell you a couple things very quickly about my group. My group began as an Oxford group meeting in 1938. It's over 70 years old. Our primary purpose is to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. My group is not the best group in the world, and it ain't the worst group in the world. It's just an AA group. One of the things my sponsor Bill taught me when I came to AA is that, son, AA is not a competition. It's okay to stop competing now. Prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, everything in my life was lived on a better than or less than basis. And here's what happens when I live my life better than or less than. I consciously separate myself, and I'm not a part of. If I'm not a part of the blessed fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, my experience proves I'm going to pick up a drink. My experience proves I will pick up a drink. So my home group, I'm not in competition anymore. I'm not the best or worst alcoholic ever to come here. I'm just an alcoholic. No, our group has a primary purpose, as I said, to carry this message to the alcoholic who still suffers. I think we do a pretty good job of that, and we have a lot of fun in the process. That's what I like to call the total package in Alcoholics Anonymous. Sponsorship, home group, big book, steps applied to my life, and service. In my experience, which is the only thing that I'm allowed to share, I have yet to meet an alcoholic of our type. And if you don't know what an alcoholic of our type is, read the book. I've yet to meet an alcoholic of our type who's taken those things, applied them to their life one day at a time to the best of their ability, which is all that's required. If you're new here, I'm getting ready to take you off the hook. Perfection is not required here. Progress toward perfection is what we shoot for up in here. I have yet to see one do that and go back out here and take a drink. I have not seen it happen one single time, and I've been here for a while. To our new friends, the program of recovery was designed for success, not for failure. On the flip side of the coin, however, I have yet to see an alcoholic of our type come in here, ignore those things, and stay sane, sober, or happy for any appreciable length of time. The simplicity of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. My sponsor Bill told me when I was new, he said, I don't know about you, but I never sat in the bar room, watched somebody across the bar drink a drink, and thought I was going to get drunk watching them drink. That's just as ridiculous as me coming in here, sitting in a chair, watching you get a sponsor and get a home group and work the steps and help others, and think that somehow magically it's going to rub off on me. Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. I identified myself as an alcoholic when I come up here. When I came in AA, I didn't know what an alcoholic was. The doctor's opinion was not discussed down to Brownlee's Tavern. So I don't know what alcoholic. I always had a definition of alcoholic, though. I like to say it was a sliding definition, because as my alcoholism progressed, I kept fitting my own definitions. So every time I would fit it, I'd have to change it. If you asked me as a teenager what an alcoholic is, I would have told you it's somebody who's drunk every day. Now, where did I get that from? I have no idea. But that's what I would have told you. That's what I thought. As a teenager, I became a daily drinker. That must not be it. I said an alcoholic is somebody that misses work, school, or important things in life because of drinking. It interferes with one's priorities in life. Yes, that must be an alcoholic. As a teenager, alcohol began to interfere with work, school, and important things in life. That ain't it. Finally, I figured it out, though. An alcoholic is somebody who goes to jail because of drinking. Certainly that must be it. As you'll hear in a few minutes, I really had to change that one. By the time I staggered through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, y'all Y'all remember Otis on the Andy Griffith Show? Otis' clothes always wrinkled. He always had a pint on him. He was in and out of jail. I watched every episode of the Andy Griffith Show, even the ones in color. I don't remember Otis working no place. Yes, that certainly must be an alcoholic, right? I always say I was over in England and I asked them that. Y'all remember Otis on the Andy Griffith Show? And 2,000 people went, no. It's rather embarrassing. I thought they had cable. Anyway, by the time I staggered through these doors, my definition was the guy under the bridge, long trench coat, stocking cap on his head, drinking Wild Irish Rose, Mad Dog, Thunderbird out of brown paper sack, sleeping under a cardboard box. Yes, that certainly must be an alcoholic, right? The reason that was my definition when I got here, that's the only thing that had not yet happened to me. And if I didn't have the family that I had that insisted for many, many years of breaking every fall I had, it's exactly where I would have been. I can stand here in all honesty tonight and tell you I drank in Wino's Alley in Sandusky, Ohio with them old men. The only difference between me and them men is when it got dark, there was somebody that would open the back door for me and there was nobody left to do it for them. That was the only difference between me and them. And you know, when I came in Alcoholics Anonymous, my disease reared up. You know, it's a funny thing, ain't it? Alcoholism lives up here. And when I come into the rooms of recovery, it is threatened. So it starts talking to me, right? And it starts looking for reasons why I don't belong here, right? And so it told me, you know, and I told him at the meeting one day, I said, you know, I ain't never been homeless. There was a man at that meeting, God rest his soul, Jim Redmond. He died 53 years sober. He looked at me and he said, really? He said, son, I got some bad news for you. He said, if you grown and you living in your mom and daddy's house and you ain't paying no rent, you homeless. That man hurt my feelings. I hope I ain't step on no toes in here tonight. So what is this thing called alcoholism in doctor's opinion? First thing in the book. Why? Because if I don't know what the problem is, I have scant chance of finding a solution, right? So it tells me I suffer from a disease. It's mental, it's physical, and it's spiritual. The mental part of it, they call a mental obsession to drink. Real simple guy, real simple explanation. What is an obsession? An obsession is a thought in my mind so powerful, it will override or overcome any thinking that I can raise as a defense against it. What are some of the mental defenses I tried to raise against taking the first drink? Well, I tried common sense. I did that. That was stupid. I won't do that anymore. Did it again the next week. That didn't work, right? My grandmother later told me I wasn't born with any common sense, so there was no way that could work. I tried willpower. No, I just say no. I was a Betty Ford. One of them said that. Nancy Reagan, just say no. I said, just give me another one. That didn't work. Somebody said using willpower on alcoholism is like eating a box of X-Lax and using your willpower not to go to the bathroom, right? But that didn't work. I tried fear of consequences I might face. I'm in my late teens and early 20s, opening my eyes and laying in the bed and mentally making a list of all the reasons I ain't picking up today. If I drink today, I'm going to lose my job, go to jail, get kicked off the team, girlfriend going to leave me, get kicked out the house, whatever it might be. Usually I have 3 or 4 of those things going on simultaneously. If you drink like I drink, that's how it is. I would look at those things, right, all true, and I would make a decision based on truth. Easiest kind of decision there is to make. I don't want those things in my life, so I ain't drinking. And I meant it as much as I mean it tonight. And then I get out of the bed. And about 5 seconds later, another thought comes floating in my head, and it usually goes something like this, right? You could have one, right? One drink never, and bam, just like a radar, I lock on that thought. And check this out if you knew. All those thoughts I had of why not to drink never come back. Why? Because I'm only going to have one. And if I only have one, none of that stuff's going to happen, right? Now, this is an honest program, and I'm going to be honest with you tonight. I have never in my entire life had one of anything that I enjoy. My philosophy of life is very simple. If one's good, two's better, three's outstanding, four's magnificent, let's pony up money for 5. I am Dr. Feelgood, right? So what is the statement, I'm only going to have one? I'll tell you what it is. It's a lie. If the 12 steps of alcohol Anonymous is an honesty-based program, and it most certainly is, because honesty is the principle of step one, and we know that each principle must be applied in the following steps. Therefore, the principle of honesty must be applied in all 12 steps. So this is an honesty-based program. Doesn't it naturally follow, let's keep it simple, that alcoholism is a lie-based disease? Old timer in Cleveland told me when I came in here, if you ever drink again, the handle attached to that glass will be a lie. My sponsor, Bill, told me, I don't know about you, but I never walked in a bar and said, hey, bartender, give me a shot and a beer. I want to be in jail by 9 o'clock. It's always going to be what? It's going to be different. I believe the lie. So I pick up the drink and I drink it, and the second part of the disease becomes active. And Dr. Silkworth called it the phenomenon of craving. I love that. There's a little story I like to tell, true story. I'm out cutting my grass on a 90-degree day, so is my non-alcoholic next-door neighbor. I'm watching him. He gets hot and thirsty. He shuts his lawnmower off. He gets off it. He walks over to his deck. He flips open a cooler. It is full of cold beer. He pulls out a cold one. He pops a top on her. He sucks it down. It quenches his thirst. And I know nobody in here is going to believe it, but I've seen this with my own two eyes. With that full cooler of beer still sitting there, that man actually got back on his lawnmower and finished cutting his grass. I'm next door going, right? Difference between me and my neighbor, I get off of my lawnmower and I pop a top on a cold one and I suck her down. It does not quench my thirst. What it does to me, keep it simple, maybe to you, is it makes me thirstier. He called it the phenomenon of craving. I called it an insatiable hunger. And I had it when I was 14 years old. And grass cutting is over at the Coleman house. My lawnmower will be in that same spot 2 weeks from now when I get out the county. Spiritual malady, soul sickness. My disease is rooted in selfishness and self-centeredness. I'm a guy who wants to control, manipulate, and use everything and everybody around him to satisfy what I believe I need to be okay. No God in the picture. The book calls it playing God. There's a problem with that, however. The people, places, and things in my life refuse to cooperate. And as a result of that, I become restless, irritable, and discontented. And I learned at the age of 14 that if I pour alcohol on restless, irritable, discontented, angry, afraid, whatever it may be, it produces in me what he called a sense of ease and comfort. This disease of mind, body, and spirit is called alcoholism, okay? And I want to share something with you. In that blue book that we carry around, there's a passage that says, when we straighten out spiritually, the mental and the physical will follow. A spiritual malady demands a spiritual solution. Not an intellectual solution, not a memorizing solution, not an analyzing solution, not a financial solution, not a relationship solution. It demands a spiritual solution. And until I get we live now in what I believe to be the greatest time to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous since its inception. We are inundated with meetings around the clock, all kinds of literature. Go down the hall and see what Rusty has down there. CDs, tapes. I mean, we are inundated with all this good stuff, aren't we? But those things in and of themselves are not a substitute for the solution, which is a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, period. What they are to facilitate our spiritual development and growth and to carry the message to An alcoholic who still suffers. It is not a substitute. When I came in AA, a guy walked up to me and said, "Don't drink and come to these meetings and you'll be fine." I looked at him and said, "If I could not drink, I wouldn't need to come to these meetings. You better have more than that." If I had the power to quit drinking on my own, I'd have never come to AA. Why should I? It's not an attendance solution. It's not a reading solution. It is the application of these principles to my life. 54 years old, I was born in the city of Sandusky, Ohio. I was the second of three boys. I was raised in a Christian home. My finer mother and father have ever graced this earth. My parents worked in the automotive industry. My mother worked for Chrysler Corporation. My father worked for General Motors. I'm retired from Ford. And I always used to say it was crazy in the house, but we had really nice cars. But anyway, I had the kind of mother and father that went to every length to provide for us those things that were denied them when they were young. I was a middle child. I had an older brother and a younger brother. I believe that's a prerequisite for alcoholism. And I had to think about living inside my head as a little boy. I always thought my older brother was the firstborn son and everybody's favorite, so he got treated good. My little brother was the baby coochie cuckoo. Everybody loved that baby. What about me? What about me? What about me? And this is as a very little boy. My mother was the president of Ohio Baptist Women's Convention. All these famous people that you see on TV and religion and people been in my house. That is the atmosphere in which I was raised. I wasn't sent to church. I was taken to church. My mom and dad were the best. They were the best. No, Bill Wilson called it 12 steps, a set of principles spiritual in nature. I was introduced to spiritually principled living before I went off to kindergarten. In our house, they told us honesty is the best policy. A real man is always honest with himself and other people. In our house, maybe in yours, we got automatic whoopings when we got caught lying. Did that happen in anybody else's house in here? That's step one. The principle of step one is honesty, and I learned it at the end of a hickory stick. My mother said to me one day, "Kenny, come here. I am very concerned about you, contrary to what you seem to believe. The sun does not rise when you wake up and set when you go to bed." She said, "Look out the window and tell me what you see. Trees, sky, birds, flowers, people, cars, grass." She said, "You think that just popped up out of nowhere?" She said, "Kenny, there's a power that's greater than you that created all this. All you have to do is be willing to believe that, step two." In our house, they said, if you will make a decision to put your life in the hands of the power that created all this, in my house, they call that power God. She said, you will always have what you need no matter what happens outside or around you. My mother was telling me the answer is inside, not outside, step three. In our house, they told us, anytime you got a problem, no matter how bad you think it is, come and talk to us about it. A problem shared is a problem half solved. You're only as sick as your secrets. That's steps 4 and 5. My mother used to say the biggest room in a human being's life is the room for improvement. If you can make C's, you can make B's. If you can make B's, you can make A's. And if you'll ask the power that created all this to help you in any positive thing you want to do, the power will always help you. That's what the power does. The power is good. Step 6 and 7. In our house, they told us anytime you hurt, harm, or wrong somebody else, take a look at who you've hurt and go make right the wrong you've done. You owe an apology, make it. If you owe time, give it. If you owe money, pay it. Clean up your mess. That's what responsible people do. Steps 8 and 9. My mother used to say you can never go forward in this life if you don't know where you are today and what you need to work on to get wherever it is you want to go. I read a book about Socrates when I was a senior in high school. In that book, Socrates said the uninventoried life is a waste. Step 10. My grandmother told us one day the secret to having a good day is very simple. When you wake up in the morning, slide out of the bed onto your knees and say one word to that power, please. As you go throughout the day and you don't know what to do, ask the power that created all of this to help you. And at night before you get back into bed, hit your knees again and say 2 words, thank you, step 11. And when we grew up, our parents taught us that the most important things that a human being could do with their life was not acquire money and material things. It was to be of service to others. We were taught to follow the golden rule. Talk to folk the way you want to be talked to. Treat folk the way you want to be treated. Respect your elders. Offer to share what you have with others before you have your own. Be of service to your fellow man. Step 12. When I got on the bus to go to kindergarten, I was already armed with a set of principles, spiritual in nature, that I met again when I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. To our new friends here tonight, I have a message for you. Spiritually principled living did not originate in Akron, Ohio in 1935. Those principles are ancient. And there's people who live like that out there every single day. And guess what? They don't expect a pat on the back for it either. I'm amazed at stuff I hear in AA sometimes. You ever hear this at an AA meeting? Boy, those people out there sure could use what we have in here. Where do you think we got it? I am absolutely amazed. Absolutely amazed. This is the only place in the world. I watch a guy across the street from me shovel the snow out of the elderly people's driveway next door. He don't come over to my house and say, "Hey, did you see me over there shoveling people?" Really? This is the only place in the world where you got to tell people, "Now we want you to do something nice for somebody else, but if you tell anybody you did it, it doesn't count." Think about that. The depth of the selfishness and self-centeredness. But when you knew, that's where we got to go, don't we? That's where you got to go. Why? Because it's all about me. I'm selfish and self-centered, and I'm so full of me I can't even see you. And that's what went on in my house. Prior to me picking up a drink of alcohol, there was no hollering and screaming in our home. There was no sleepless nights. There was no anxiety. There was no guilt and shame and resentment. I brought that into that house, and I infected the people who loved me with it to the point where they were actually sicker than I was. I'm not a guy who stands behind a podium and talks about the good times I had drinking. Let me share something with you. I'm a guy that liked to come to meetings when I was new, and I would watch the reaction of other people when somebody said something. Somebody said one day, "Boy, I had a lot of fun drinking." And everybody went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," you know. So I went to a meeting and said it. And an old timer looked at me and said, "Really?" He said, "Let me ask you something, son." He said, "If we brought your mother, your father, the girl you live with, your neighbors, your co-workers, and your creditors in here, and we asked them what kind of time they had, what do you think they'd say?" I said, "I don't want to have that meeting." I said, "I never thought of that." He said, "I know you haven't, because all you think of is you. All you think of is you." You know what Kent's definition is of a good time? Any consequences that have to be paid as a result of my drinking and irresponsible behavior are paid by somebody else. That's my definition of a good time. Because somebody always paid. How many sleepless nights did I visit on my parents while I'm having fun and I ain't hurting nobody? How many days of work did I cheat my employer out of and take money? My sponsor called it stealing. But I ain't hurting nobody. It's my life. It's my life. I don't stand behind the podium and glorify a progressive fatal disease that almost took my life and drove my mother and father and the people who love me to the brink of insanity. I don't do that. This is an insidious disease, and left untreated, it is going to kill me. As a kid, I was restless, irritable, discontented, and afraid. And I began to look outside of me for something to make me feel better on the inside. I got to get that taken care of, right? My first drink of choice was my older brother. My older brother was 4 years older than me. I come from a football family. A lot of families are good at music and art. My family plays football. And we do it on Saturdays and Sundays in front of 90 or 100,000 people. That's what my family do. That's what we was raised to do. Our baby pictures is not us laying on a bare rug in a diaper. Our baby pictures is us in a three-point stance in a diaper in the middle of the living room. And that ain't a joke, that's the truth. And that's the way that we were raised. My father played for West Virginia State University. My Uncle Bo played for Penn State. I had two cousins that played in the National Football League for over 10 years. That's what my family do. And my brother was going to play at Ohio State. And my brother was bad. He was 6'3" and about 215 pounds when he was 16 years old. He could run a 4.40 on a cinder track. And he had a real nasty attitude when you put a helmet on him. And he was my hero. He was a lot of people's hero. And he had agreed to go to play for a man named Woody Hayes at Ohio State. And we went down to Massillon, Ohio, with some Ohio people in here, and y'all know this deal. We went to scrimmage the Massillon Tigers, and my high school and Massillon was the two great high school powers in Ohio at that time. And late in that scrimmage, he got hit and fell funny. Walked to the sidelines, collapsed, stopped breathing. They rushed him to the hospital. He lapsed into a coma that night. It was a Saturday night. 9 hours of brain surgery on Monday. And he died Wednesday, September the 5th, 1972. I remember like it was yesterday. Is that what made me? I idolized my brother. He took me with him everywhere that he went. And I look back on that now and I thank God for that, because we weren't going to have that much time. I got a brother that's 4 years younger than me. We in our 50s and we ain't been no place together yet. But I idolize and love my brother. What did that do to me? Did it make me alcoholic? Absolutely not. Stop any car out here on the street, you'll get a similar story. People live, people die, tragedies happen, don't they? What it did to me was a couple of things. Looking back, inventory is a great thing in this program. And what it did to me is a couple of things that I've learned through inventory. It set me up to be a victim. I felt like I had been cheated out of something that I deserved, and that was my brother. I never talked about that. I never talked about that until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And this idea of I'm not getting mine and I'm not treated right and nothing is my fault, I didn't directly tie to that event until many years later, but it set up this mentality that I developed over the years. Broke my heart, almost killed my mom and daddy. Really almost killed my grandparents. And that was September of '72. Start hanging out with guys my own age. My brother is gone. And I'm hanging out with guys I've known since I'm 2 years old, go to school with them, go to church with them, play ball with them, known them as long as I know my own brothers. Feel absolutely and totally disconnected. You know, it's like everybody's inside a plastic bubble. I'm on the outside looking in. Topics of conversation among our crew at the age of 13 in 1972 was very simple. 3 things: drinking beer, smoking weed, and climbing in and out of girls' bedroom windows in the middle of the night. And I was batting 0, 0, 0. I was not doing none of that. My mama didn't play it. I had no idea what they was talking about. But of course, I don't let them know that, do I? Y'all remember them dogs that used to put in the back window of the car, the head would go like this? That's me, right? Right? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I did that. Ain't that fun? I'm 13 years old. I'm a liar, a fake, and a phony. I start telling people I've been places I haven't been. I know people I don't know, and I've done things that I haven't done. I was addicted to approval long before I took a drink of alcohol. I was addicted to approval long before I took a drink of alcohol. And I am willing to compromise everything that I've been taught and believed to be true to gain your acceptance. That's how it was for me at the age of 13. My mama used to talk to me a lot after my brother died, and she would tell me, God's been good to you, blah, 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 blah. I used to tell my mother, I got no desire to be of service to God, you, or anybody else. If I could tell you in 30 seconds what I want out of life, I want mine, I want to get it my way, and I'm going to need you to leave me alone while I'm doing it because I'm not interested in your way. My mother would get that sad look that mothers get on their faces and shake her head and look at me, and she'd say, you know something, Kenny, you don't get it. We didn't raise you that way. And I would look at my mom and point my finger in her face and say, no, you the one who don't get it. If you don't think my way is going to work, get out the way and watch me roll. That's what I'm like at the age of 13. One of the gifts God did give me is I did well in school. You know, my sponsor, Bill, when I was new in AA, this the kind of head I got. I said to Bill one day, Bill, I got a question. He said, now what? And I said, you know the invisible line they talk about in AA? And he said, yes. I said, if it's invisible, how does anybody ever know they crossed it? This is the kind of mind I got. His response to me was this: I want you to double your meetings. I said, Bill, I'm already going to 2 a day. He said, go to 4. You're driving us crazy. He said, anytime you are in a room alone, all your enemies are there. And what he was referring to is my thinking. So I was 14 years old. I was sitting in study hall one day in school. I'm a straight A student. And I had a visit from the enemy, my thinking. And here's the thought that occurred to me that day. You know, these people break their neck trying to get B's and C's, taking general math and science. I'm taking calculus, physics, 4th year Latin, 4th year English. I'm sleeping through class. You know, it just might be entirely possible that I know everything. Y'all know where this is going, don't you? I had no evidence to support that thought as being true. I accepted it as a fact, and I left the room and took action on it because that's what I do with my thinking. I actually went home and shared that with my mother and father. I thought they ought to know. Probably would change things around the house a little bit. What happened after I told him that, I can tell you real quick. My father came up off that couch, and I believe, and I never asked him to the day he died, I believe that man intended to strangle me. He had to be thinking, look what we got in the house. I'm going to end it now. I don't know. I broke for the screen door. I was scared of my daddy. My daddy played football when they didn't have face masks. I got out the screen door, locked the screen door. My daddy come right up behind me, and he looked through the screen door at me, and this is what he told me, and I'll never forget it to the day I die. He said, boy, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have a hard life. He said, Kenny, don't nobody know everything. You can't be taught nothing if you know everything. And I stood and I looked through the screen door and I laughed in his face. That was a significant day in my life because on that day I closed the door. Now, our book says honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness are the 3 essentials of recovery, yet they are indispensable. An open mind is essential to growth. Once my mind is closed, I can no longer learn, I can no longer grow. And I stop maturing and I stop developing. And I live in my own little world where I'm right and you're wrong. From that day forward, everybody in my life got stupid. My mother, my father, the preacher, the teacher, later on, the police, the judges, the lawyer, the probation, the PO. If I don't know it, it ain't worth knowing became my philosophy of life. Selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, self-absorbed, and according to my mother, mean as a rattlesnake. I have yet to take a drink of alcohol. I tell people I was the perfectly tilled soil for the disease of alcoholism. All I had to do was water it, and I did. I got in the car with a guy who lived the life I lived in my head. He had a snazzy car, a pocket full of money. He ran around with the kind of girls I ran away from when I seen him coming down the hall. And I got in the car with Johnny, and Johnny said, hey, Coleman, you want to get something to drink? I have been warned about drinking. Alcoholism does not run in my family. It gallops. And I have been told we do not do alcohol well. Stay away from it. Look at your Uncle Ed. Look at Junior. Look at Bobby. They all died of cirrhosis. If Johnny had said to me that day, let's go rob to carry out, I absolutely guarantee everybody in this room I would have done it. Those are the lengths I will go to gain your approval. I'm empty on the inside. My God, there's got to be something out there that'll make this in here all right. What I've learned today, if you're new in here, outside solutions don't fix inside problems. We went through the drive-thru. We bought 10 quarts of Swiss malt liquor bull. To the newcomer in here, a quart of beer is the predecessor of the 40 ounce. I know a lot of y'all don't know what that is. It was a while ago, right? He said, 5 quarts for you, 5 quarts for me. 5 quarts of beer is a lot of beer for a youngster. We dropped the convertible top on that Pontiac. We rode through the streets of Sandusky. He cranked up the Parliament Funkadelic, and we started drinking. And I can tell you this, and and our book talks about the effect produced by alcohol. The only thing I can tell you is this. On that day, I started growing, and the rest of the world started shrinking. I went from shy, insecure, and afraid to bold, confident, suave, debonair, and absolutely fearless in about 20 minutes. We went behind the Derrick Apartments where all the thugs hung out. I had not said 5 words in public in the last 3 years. I told Johnny, turn that music down because there's a few things I want to tell a few people who are present here this afternoon that I have been wanting to tell them for quite some time. And I went around that circle of hoodlums and told each and every one of them not only what I thought of them, but what they needed to do, in my opinion, to improve themselves. The reaction of the guys surrounding that car, they was leaning in the car and hugging me, and they said, see, I told you, my boy, all right, Coleman's loosening up. He's doing a little drinking. He's one of us. And, buddy, I made a mental note of that. When I drink, it changes me. And I now have the acceptance the people whose acceptance I want the most. And that wasn't mom and dad. That was them drive-by shooters behind the Derrick Apartments. Alcohol equals success, and you better believe I got it. We left from there. We went up to home with some of them girls he run around with, I run away from. Never been over there in my life. I walked into that house like I was paying a mortgage. I went in the dining room and I sat down at the dining room table and I looked across that room at what I believe is the finest girl to graduate from Sandusky High School in his 171-year history. I had not even breathed in her direction, much less said hello. And I looked over there at her and she looked up at me and I said, "Come here." And she got up and started walking toward me. Now, any sane human being at this point would probably think, "Gee, Ken, if you wasn't so shy and scared, look what you could have done just by speaking up." Is that what I thought? Absolutely not. The alcoholic mind, check this out if you knew. Here's what I thought. If you had been drinking before now, look what you could have done. Look what you've been missing. Huh? Anybody relate to that? Alcohol equals success, and you better believe I got it. Now, I said earlier, it's the honest program, I'll be honest with you. When she got over there to me, I had no idea what to do with her. I don't think that far ahead when I'm drinking. So I did what I see them do on TV. Guys like me watch a lot of TV. We got a lot of time on our hands. And I went like this. And she sat down in my lap. And my life changed again. And the upshoot to this whole story is very, very simple. On that day, alcohol did for me what I could not or would not do for myself. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. And that's a very, very powerful thing. And I know today that alcohol is not supposed to do that. God is. God is. What happened the rest of that day? Give you the rest of my drinking history. Drank trouble. I'm a consequences drinker. I know we probably got a few of them in here. A lot of people come in here, they ain't had DUIs, lost jobs, lost families, and all that stuff. You know, I came in here, I hadn't lost nothing either. My sponsor pointed out, you don't have anything to lose, which, you know, that was my mind talking to me. I didn't have a house. See, I want you to understand something about the kind of alcoholic I am. I'm a low-bottom drunk. I didn't have a home when I came to you. I didn't have a wife and family. Children. I had nothing. I'm a guy who drinks to the exclusion of life. Alcoholism in me is so powerful. I actually thought that people in AA, when I got here that had families and stuff, couldn't be alcoholic. I really thought that. When I pick up a drink, I don't pay bills when my disease is active. I do not go to work when my disease is active. I can't take care of a hamster, much less a wife, when my disease is active. Okay? And that's how I drink. But I'm a consequences drinker. You know, a lot of people don't get DUIs and all that stuff. And you don't have to. You can get off the elevator at any floor. You know what the price of admission is in here? Honesty. The first step. That's all. You can get off the elevator at any floor. However, that is not my experience. If this here was a drink of alcohol, and I stood here and took a drink, a cop would drop right out of that light and land in the middle of this dance floor. That is my experience. What happened on my first drunk? Went in a blackout. I have no idea what went on the next 4 or 5 hours, according to eyewitnesses back at the house. I came in, threw up a trail through the house, through the living room, through the kitchen, through the family room. My grandfather fell on the floor laughing. I went in the bathroom, hit everything but the toilet. The next thing I remember is my mother knocking on the door, screaming, "Come out here, clean up this mess. You know you've been drinking." Blah, 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 blah. I staggered into the hallway in what later years would be my drinking uniform, my underwear. Bouncing off of them hallway walls. I got a hangover you can take out and look at. I'm dying. Locked the bathroom door, put my Hands on the bathroom sink, look in the mirror, and this is what I said. Man, oh man, I cannot wait to do that again. Grounded for life is what was being discussed in the living room and how they was going to carry out that sentence. So I had a meeting with myself in the bathroom. I like to have a meeting with myself because I can solve most problems when I have a meeting with myself. And I took a look at the situation, and here's what I come up with. Okay, Kent, let's take a look at what happened. You got drunk? Yep. You got sick? Yep. And as a result of that, you are grounded for life. Now, the problem here, Kent, is not that you got drunk. The problem is that you got sick. What you got to do is learn how to drink without getting sick. Anybody relate to that? When the big book talks about the guy that puts his hand on a hot stove, beats himself in the head with a hammer to get rid of a headache, I got the kind of mind. Dude, not drinking was never an option I considered. Why? Because of the effect produced by alcohol. Alcohol equals pats on the back, girls in my lap. Alcohol equals success, and I was gone. And I never looked back until I came to you. They got me a car when I was 16. I had a 1 o'clock curfew. I went to a place in Toledo, Ohio, which is an hour away, called the All Beautiful Shade Nightclub. At least that's what they called it on the radio. When I got there, it was a hole in the wall, right? I'm 16 years old. I got a fake ID in my pocket, and I'm in there drinking a gin and juice and dancing with a woman older than my mother. I come staggering into the house, 4 o'clock in the morning. I got a 1 o'clock curfew. Every time I came home, my mother's bedroom light was always on. Anybody else's mama's bedroom light always on when you came home? And my mother would call me and she said, "Come here, Kenny, I want to see you." All right? And I'd stick my head around the corner, and this is what I used to say to my mother: "Why are you up?" Seriously, why are you up? I said, if y'all go somewhere, I don't sit up here at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning waiting on y'all to come home. I want you to understand the depth of my selfishness and self-centeredness. I cannot even comprehend the love of a parent for a child. I am so full of me. It's like the rest of the world is like cardboard cutouts, man. I couldn't comprehend that. This night, she wasn't in the bedroom. She was sitting on the living room couch. The lamp was on, and I came in that door, and with tears running down her face, this is what my mother told me. She said, "As your family, as your mom and dad, we owe you a roof over your head, clothes on your back, food to eat, and an education, and we have fulfilled our part of the bargain." She said, "But buddy, I got something you can't have." She said, "That's my peace of mind." She said, "Kenny, you going to penitentiary or the cemetery, and I got news for you. I ain't going with you." She said, "I'm done. I'm giving you to God. I'm done. Go. Do what you want. I'm done." This is what I said to my mom. "I broke you. I broke you. And I want you to know something, Ma." I said, "I'm a little bit disappointed you being such a spiritual giant, because it wasn't even that hard." And I walked away from my mother. That's Ken at age 16. If I treated my mama like that, how you think I treated yours? Went off to college and my alcoholism exploded. No more parental interference. I had shakes by the time I was 19 years old. I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, one of the finer institutions of higher learning in this country. At least it was till I got there. And I set up headquarters at the Boar's Head Inn. And I got up one morning shaking so bad I couldn't fasten my shirt. I went to talk to the bartender, Tom. He's kind of like my sponsor, I guess. And I said, "Tom, I think I got Parkinson's." Looked at me and said, "You're 19 years old. You ain't got Parkinson's." He said, "Let me tell you what you do." He said, "You go get a fifth of 100 proof old Granddad, get up tomorrow morning, take 2 shots, I guarantee your hands will stop shaking." I went and got the Granddad, got up the next morning shaking like a leaf. I drank 2 shots, my hands stopped shaking. You know what I said? "That man's a genius." My sponsor, Bill, pointed out to me when I came into AA, he said, "Do you notice that you never questioned the bartender? But you were surrounded by family, coaches, counselors, professors, all these people who cared about you and wanted the best for you, and all you ever said was, 'I ain't hurting anybody, I'm grown in this life.' But you never question the bartender. To the new people in here, why is it that I'm always willing to listen to the people who harm me? Why is that? 5 years of that foolishness, they give me a piece of paper and booted me out of there. I'm living proof that you can get a college degree and no education. And I went to work in an automotive factory because by this time, alcoholism is now dictating every aspect of my life. Where I work, when I work, who I work with, what I do, where I go, it is dictating every aspect of my life. And I'm working in an auto factory. I could have did that out of high school. I didn't need to go to college for that. Right? And I'm working the midnight shift because there ain't no bosses there and I can drink on the job. I am 22 years old and I cannot work an 8-hour shift without drinking. Get out of this drinking thing. I don't talk a lot about the trouble I've been in. That's podium flash because it ain't necessary to be here. Those are social consequences for antisocial behavior. They don't make me alcoholic. Penitentiary full of guys who commit crimes that ain't alcoholic. No. But I could tell you very quickly, I've been convicted of DUI 7 times in the state of Ohio. I could tell you I've been in more trouble than the law allows. I won't leave that at that. You know, I could tell you how alcohol, at this point in my life, I'm going to my mom and daddy's house and stealing. I ain't going to work but 2 or 3 days a week. Give you an example how this thing worked. You know, I sincerely, a lot of times, wanted to do the right thing. But my disease doesn't care what I want to do. I went by my mom and dad's house with my vacation check. Got off work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I said, hey, I'll be by. I'm going to go cash this check. I'll be back to pay you the money that I owe you. That was on a Friday morning. The next time my mother saw me was when 2 detectives brought me off of an elevator in leg shackles and handcuffs in the Toledo House of Corrections, facing 3 felonies and 11 misdemeanors, and my mother's only statement to me was, whose gun was it? And I said, Mom, it was mine. Alcohol was always the victor. Alcohol was a solution for me, not a problem. I flipped my car over. They cut me out of it because I didn't have no brakes. Hadn't had none. But if you drink like I drink, brakes is a luxury. They cut me out of that car at 9:30 on a Sunday morning. My buddies saw the car, thought I was dead, called the church where my family was. They announced it from the pulpit. My 90-year-old grandmother faints, but I ain't hurting nobody. I got out of the hospital. That was DUI, I think, number 6. And I went down to Tavern. And here's what I come up with. Thank God I was drinking. I was limber. I'd have been sober, I'd have stiffened up, and I broke my neck. Oh my God, alcohol saved me again. Can anybody relate to this kind of thinking? I never thought if I hadn't been drunk, I'd have had brakes and I wouldn't have been out there in the first place. In the blizzard of 77, they found me sitting in a snowbank, 70-mile-an-hour winds. Some guys took me and put me into a dormitory and put me in my bed. I woke up the next day, you know what I thought? Thank God I was drinking. I had that antifreeze in me. If it wasn't for that, I'd have froze to death. It never occurred to me if I wasn't drunk, I wouldn't have been out there in the first place. This is where I come from. They sent me to the penitentiary, gave me a break. My uncle, my mother's brother, was the mayor of Sandusky. Judge told me before we throw you away, give you one more chance. Put you on a period of indefinite probation. Want you to report to the probation officer every Friday for a urine test. 1 dirty urine, anything as much as an aspirin, I'm going to send you to penitentiary for 5 years, and I ain't shocking you out. Thank you, God. I'll never do it again. And I meant it as much as I mean it now. Got off work the next Friday. I had 1 hour before adult probation opened. Here's the thought that occurred to me. You know, They say they never test you on your first time reporting. They don't think anybody's that stupid. Who is they? But this is the head I got. Hour later, I walk into adult probation with 5 years hanging over my head for a dirty urine, me walking drunk. And I didn't do that because I'd rather be drunk than sober. I did that because I'm powerless over alcohol and I had no solution. If I could decide not to drink and not drink, I wouldn't be here. No baths, no showers at the end of my drinking. I got a liver distended about 7 inches. Every time I take a drink of whiskey, I cough up all this white stuff. I find out later my liver and my pancreas are ceasing to function. What I'm coughing up is pure alcohol. My body is now rejecting what my mind is obsessed with. I'm 32 years old and I'm dying of alcoholism. Last 3 years of my drinking, I went to a place I never wanted to go before. I called it hell on earth. I tried everything I could think of to quit. I quit hanging around them guys. All that stuff that was read earlier from chapter 3, I tried all that stuff. Got the booze out of the house. I quit hanging around them guys. I went back to church. I read the Bible every night. I have a Bible in this hand and a Miller High Life in this hand. I could not shut it off. And I came to a point of hopelessness. Hopelessness. I drank to the point that I no longer cared. In my life, there was no day or night, no right, no wrong, no good, no evil, no God, no devil. I simply no longer cared. And that's as far away from God as I believe a human being can get. If I hate, I still have the capacity to love. I didn't even hate anymore. I just didn't care. And that's what I was when I got to you. No, God in his infinite wisdom did not allow me to see Alcoholics Anonymous until I had no other options. My sponsor, Bill, always says that AA works best when you run out of ideas. And by the time I got to you, I had no more ideas. I came out of a bar called the Pump Lounge, and I had what they call a moment of clarity or a moment of sanity. There's a guy in Cleveland, Six-Pack Charlie Kitchen, and he says that's the moment when God paralyzes the liar in you long enough for you to see the truth. And I got in the car, and for the first time in almost 20 years, my head cleared, and this is what I saw. If you don't stop drinking, you're going to die. You better get some help because you can't do it by yourself, and you better do it now because you're running out of time. Out of nowhere. I'm a great believer in the power of prayer. I believe I was prayed in here. I didn't get here of my own volition because I didn't even know what this was. And I went home when I had that moment of clarity, and I called a guy that was my best drinking buddy in college. He's a doctor now, and I owed him $5,000. Didn't even know if he'd take a call from me. And his wife answered the phone, and this is what she said and how she said it. Richard, it's Kent. And Rich got on the phone, and I said, Rich, it's your boy, man. I need some help. And this is what he said to me. I've been waiting for this call for 7 or 8 years. Pack a bag. Stay by the phone. I got you. When I get a call from the North Central Intergroup Office of Alcoholics Anonymous in Sandusky, Ohio at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know what I tell the guy on the other end? Pack a bag. Stay by the phone. I got you. And for that, I am responsible. Told me don't go to work, they're going to fire you. He says, I want you to come down here in the morning, I'm going to put you in treatment in a place in Xenia, Ohio called Green Hall. It was one of them hospital treatment centers. I got a $25,000 big book. And I had good insurance, you know, auto workers do. Next morning, my brother and his wife drove me to 2.5 hours from Sandusky down to Richard's home in Centerville outside of Dayton. I didn't know too much about treatment, but I had figured out on my own they wasn't serving no liquor down there, so I had a case of Genesee with me in the back seat. As we sped down I-75, I got 3 or 4 of them Jennies in me, and y'all ain't gonna believe this, but I had a visit from the enemy, my thinking, on my way to treatment. And here's what the enemy said to me after 3 or 4 cold beers. You know, I just may have overreacted here. It ain't that bad. Oh, I'll start my comeback tomorrow, right? What I didn't know is my daddy told my brother and his wife, I'll give you $100, you don't bring that tramp back here. That's a true story. That's a true story. We got down there and got in the car with Richard, and he bought me a quart of Miller's for the trip, said it was always your favorite. He drove me from his home in Centerville over to treatment in Xenia. We pulled in the parking lot of Green Memorial Hospital. He put his car in park. He turned, he looked at me, got the biggest smile I ever seen on his face. And he said, go ahead, dog, finish that. And don't ask me how I know it, man. He said, that's the last drink you ever going to take. That was the 17th of May, 1992. I have not had another drop of alcohol or anything stronger than an aspirin since that day. That applause is for you. That applause is for you, and that applause is for God. Because on my own, I absolutely guarantee you I would have destroyed myself years ago. I don't have the power not to. If you knew in here, because it was said earlier by Teresa, I ain't been back out there either. Relapse is not a requirement for recovery. As a matter of fact, however, at my home group, they'll stand up and they'll say, I'm John Doe. I'm reintroducing myself. I have relapsed. And I'll say, really? Can I ask you a couple of questions, Mr. Doe? Sure, Kent. Do you have a sponsor? Well, no. Have you read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and applied the steps to your life a day at a time to the best of your ability? No. Do you have a home group and a service commitment? Well, no. Well, then, what exactly did you relapse from? Let me share something. We're giving people the impression who come here and do nothing and go drink again that they've relapsed. A relapse is a return to a prior condition. If the prior condition is untreated alcoholism and it ain't been treated, you ain't relapsed, you've continued to drink. And people are saying AA don't work that don't even know what AA is. We got a program here. A spiritual awakening as a result of these steps is the treatment for alcoholism. And if you haven't done that, you haven't relapsed if you're an admitted alcoholic. We got to stop patronizing people in here and telling people that's sitting in a meeting somewhere. You know what a man told me when I was new? Mr. Willie Witherspoon, God rest his soul. Boy, sitting in a chicken coop don't make you no chicken. We got people that come here, don't treat the illness, and of course they drink again. Had a great time in treatment, 35 days in a 28-day program. I'll tell you how that went. That 28 days was up, my insurance cut off. They called out to the Ford plant and they said, we don't think Kent's ready to leave the hospital. You know what they said out to the plant? We don't either. I offered to help the rest of the patients in treatment because they were the sickest people I ever seen in my life. The next morning, my enemy married a nurse who was 28 years sober, hung a sign around my neck this big and said, I am not a counselor. I had to wear it for a whole week. That's my treatment experience. They used to have people write 4 steps and do fifths before they left treatment. Anybody remember them days? That ain't what they did with me. 35 days on step 1. That's a true story. I got out of treatment and I came home and I started to play a game. It's called Don't Drink, Go to Meetings, and Don't Do Nothing Else. If I put my arm through a window and I cut an artery in my arm and start bleeding all over the floor, I put a towel on my arm, I drive myself to the hospital, I run in the emergency room, I'm bleeding to death. The doctor walks out and says, come on back, Mr. Coleman, we'll treat you now. I sit there in the emergency room bleeding to death, look at the doctor and say, no thank you, I'll just sit here. And I bleed to death in the emergency room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the emergency room. See, I've been here long enough now. I've watched people who attend these meetings on a daily basis die of untreated alcoholism before our very eyes. The treatment for the disease I suffer from is a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, period. I went to 250 meetings in 3 months. I had nowhere else to go. And at the end of those 3 months, I ended up in the parking lot of Daly's Pub. And I never wanted to drink so bad in my life, I was vibrating. And I sat in that car and I asked myself the question, what is wrong with you? You're going to these meetings round the clock. I said, God, what am I doing wrong? My first prayer in 3 months. And I got an immediate answer, what are you doing right? If you go to 250 meetings in 3 months, you hear it every day, don't you? Get a sponsor, read the book, work the steps, get a group, get active, help others. I didn't do none of that. I treated AA like a cigarette-smoking, donut-dunking coffee clutch. I thought alcohol was the problem, and I'm not drinking. A guy came up to me at work and said, for God's sake, go take a drink. You're driving us all crazy. My problem wasn't alcohol, was it? My problem is something much, 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 much worse. It's called alcoholism. And it's a progressive fatal disease that will kill me, listen to this, whether I drink or not if I don't treat it. And you old timers in here know exactly what I'm talking about. How many times have we seen somebody with double-digit years in here eat a bullet? Instead of going into that bar, I pulled out of there. I was granted something Teresa talked about earlier, the gift of desperation. I'd been to enough meetings. I'd heard. I knew what I had. I knew what needed to be done. I knew where to go, and I knew who to go to. And I ran to a man at a meeting, and I said, would you sponsor me? And this is what that man told me. He said, I will sponsor you out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only thing that I know. They call these 12 steps a kit of spiritual tools. I got a toolbox in my house at home. I ain't never seen a hammer and screwdriver walk across the floor of my living room and fix a thing. The only value of a tool is if I pick it up and use it. The only value of these steps is if I apply them to my life. I've had the privilege of standing behind podiums of AA all over the world. I have yet to attend a meeting where somebody stands up and says, works if you know it. And my sponsor took me through the steps of this program as I try to live them in my life today. I'm going to wrap this thing up here in a minute and just tell you very, very quickly, I did have the opportunity to make amends to my mom before she died. My mom died when I was almost 2 years sober. My sponsor told me, you ain't going in there with no more of this I'm sorry crap. She already knows you're sorry. What I want you to do is go in there and do something you haven't done in your 32 years of living. I said, what is that, Bill? He said, be the kind of son God intends for a son to be. And my mom had bone cancer, and I was allowed into that home from which I had been banned for stealing. I had broken my mother and father's house and stole $3,000 of my grandfather's money, and they had barred me from that home. They said, it's the first time you ever tried to do anything right, but listen, buddy, we're going to be watching you. One slip up and you're out of here. And I helped my dad take care of my mom. And my mom saw me go to all them AA meetings. My mom saw me bring my first sponsees to that house and sit down at the kitchen table and open the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. My mama see me put on a shirt and a tie and go speak at AA meetings when I ain't even have a suit. Got close to the end, my sponsor said, it's time for your direct. They got her off the morphine. I came to the hospital. I had a big speech planned out. I had tears coming down my face. She had tears coming down hers. My mother had the biggest brown eyes I've ever seen. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mama, I'm sorry. It's the only thing I could get out. And my mother beamed at me. And she said, I forgive you. She said, I want you to promise me something, Kenny, that you will stay with those people in Alcoholics Anonymous. They were able to do for you what we could not. They were the answer to our prayers. And I promised her I would, and I have. My mother died holding my hands and looking in my eyes in a hospital room full of my relatives calling her name. I got a big family. And my Uncle Amos stood in the back of the room and said, don't call her no more because she ain't going to look away from him. That's how she wants to go. And that's how my mama left this earth. And I'm going to tell you something. I've been blessed 1,000,000 times over since then, but if I never got nothing but that was enough. Thank God for the fellowship and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. My dad died. I was 18 years sober. We had a great life, and we were best of friends. And My dad saw me get married in sobriety, saw the birth of my children, and I used to take my kids. I used to take my kids over to my daddy's house, and they trash his living room in about 3 minutes. And I'd be halfway home, and he'd call me on my cell phone and say, "Come back here and get these kids." And I go back to get them, and I tell him, I said, "Daddy, I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with them." He said, "I'll do, they're yours." To get them out of here. I got 2 little girls. Thank God they ain't boys. And I was the last person to see my father alive. And we sat and we talked. Thank God for the fellowship and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. A lot of things have happened to me in the last 20. Got married in here. I got divorced about 2 years ago, and I moved to Las Vegas. Some of y'all know that. I stayed out here with y'all for a year. Worked with my sponsor out here, and thought I might stay, but my children wanted me to come home. So in February, I went back to Ohio, and I'm all right with that. I miss y'all, though, but I'm all right with that, because that's where I'm supposed to be right now. Wow, it's just been, the last couple of years been something else. I'm going to share something with you. If you're anything like me, there's going to come a day when all the stuff that you think you need, because the ego returns in here, and you start to arrange your life, even though you ain't consciously doing it, to be what you think it ought to be. And one day all that's gone. And ain't nothing left but God. And if I don't have a relationship with Him, I'm in a lot of trouble. God either is or He is not. God is everything or else He is nothing. What was our choice to be? And I've stayed focused on God. I've stayed active in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor, Bill, told me, bury yourself knee deep. He said, no, bury yourself shoulder deep in this thing called AA so you can't teeter and fall. And I've remained shoulder deep in Alcoholics Anonymous through the past 2 years. And there's been a lot of difficult days. But if I stay in the right now, I'm all right. If I stay in the right now, I am all right. You ever start thinking about 2 weeks from now and you get that funny feeling in your stomach? You know what that is, don't you? That's an absence of God, because God ain't 2 weeks from now. Whenever I mentally leave this moment, I leave His grace. We're going to say a prayer when this is over, and it's going to say, give us this day our daily bread, not our weekly, monthly, or quarterly bread. Give us this day our daily bread. Right now just keeps being all right. I met a young lady out here. She's with me in Ohio now. She says to tell all y'all hi. Some of y'all know Whitney. And she told me to tell y'all hi. And my life is good. Got a good job, and I'm back in the automotive industry. Sponsoring 3 brand new guys right now. It's driving me crazy. I just want to say this to you as I leave. They gave me a tape of a man named Warren Chisholm Sr. In that tape, he was the 12th man in AA in Cleveland. He got sober in 1939. He was a friend of my sponsor, Bill. And in that tape, he made this statement, that anyone who comes here who is willing to practice the principles and precepts of this program, as outlined by the founders in the big book, need never drink again, one day at a time. I ran to my sponsor. I said, Bill, he can't say that. Never drink again, a day at a time. Bill said, oh, yes, he can. He said, and I'm going to tell you why I can't. He said, because this is a spiritual program, and God doesn't fail. There is no failure here, but I must participate in my own recovery. God will not do for me what I have to do, what I can do for myself. Those who do get, and those who don't, and it's just that simple. If I said anything to help you tonight, thank God. Don't thank me or myself. I am nothing. If I didn't say nothing to help you tonight, it's some marathon meetings tonight. God does not make too hard terms with those who seek Him. God could and would, if He were sought. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Good night, Las Vegas.